Ooh, pouty. Grr. Hey dolls, it's me, Wilma Fingerdoo, the Suet Puddin' with another makeup and movies, my 19th in fact. And today's makeup, I'm going to be using the Beauty and the Breakup palette from PLouise. I'm also going to be using the Nude palette from Beauty Bay. Why, you ask? Well, I want to do a natural beat. And the reason for that is I'm going to be doing that for today's movie, which is The Princess Bride. Now, this was a requested movie for Teresa Mulhern, who, if you haven't followed her on YouTube, I've got her link up here, but seriously, she is fabulous. She does quick reviews of makeup on TikTok, and every Saturday has her releases and rants, which is a great series of new releases from makeup companies that happened that week. So if you haven't seen those, I will put the link up to the latest one here for that as well. I've been on there a few times myself helping rant and release, and I have to tell you, my Saturdays don't start until I watch her releases and rants, whether I'm on it or not, I'm just saying. So we are going to start with some contouring. I'm going to start with the Beauty Bay Nudes palette because this palette has a great range. Most of the colors I'm going to be using are these top two rows. This row here is all shimmers. We'll be dipping into those as well to get that princessy glow. These are shimmers as well, deeper tones, and then the darker tones down here will be for contours. I don't know if I'll need any of the grays. Nice to have them. This is one of the things I like about this palette is that there are some cool tone neutrals in the gray row, but mostly that. The other palette, the Beauty and the Breakup, this is one that I got in a P. Louise mystery box. They're excellent, but I didn't expect to get this one. This one is a very neutral, glam, bridal palette, going to work through the week. It's very neutral, but pink leaning, warm tones. And I don't hate this, but I would never have bought this on my own. It's just not a palette. As I say, I have the nudes. I'm pretty good, but this palette is actually quite nice. It has just some of these rosier tones in here. They're gorgeous. And so what I want to do with my look for The Princess Bride is keep it neutral and light. I might dip into one or two other palettes just to punch up some color just a little, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So I'm going to start with my contour with the Beauty Bay Nudes. I'm going to just work on my nose contour, and I'm going to start to build up my eye for the finished look. As I say, my finished look will be a neutral look. It's going to be my Princess Bride, my interpretation of a drag Princess Bride, but I'm going to try and keep it as more princessy bride than draggy. I'm just saying. All right, so I'm going to be taking I'm using a lot of brushes from the Trixie Cosmetics line because I really like it. And I'm just going to start with a bunch of these different shades up here. I'm just going to be building up this contour into my eye area, and it will be fantastic. Or I will know the reason why. So right now I'm just taking the shade All or Nothing to create my eye socket. This is a nice mid-tone, nude, neutral, slightly warm. So The Princess Bride was a 1987 release. It's a fantasy, adventure, comedy, and was directed by the brilliant Rob Reiner. It stars Carrie Elways in his first major motion picture role, Robin Wright in her first major motion picture role as well, and includes a fabulous cast of characters. It was adapted by the novel written by an American novelist and playwright, William Goldman. He wrote this novel in 1973 for his daughters, and they picked the name of the novel. One of them wanted a story about a princess, and one of them wanted a story about a bride. So there you go, The Princess Bride. Now, he's won Academy Awards for his screenplays, such as Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969, All the President's Men in 1976. Other works have included his thriller novel Marathon Man in 1974, which he also adapted for a film. Rob Reiner directed this movie, but he started out as an actor. He's actually the son of Carl Reiner, who is a classic TV comedy producer, writer, actor. He created the Dick Van Dyke Show, which gave us Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore. Now, his son, Rob, started his career as an actor. He went to school for it and gained a lot of notoriety when he played Michael Stivic, aka Meathead, on the CBS comedy All in the Family, which aired from 1971 to 1979. And he won 2 Primetime Emmy Awards for his trouble. Now, after the show ended, Rob Reiner went on to do some directorial work. His first big thing that he did was the improv movie This Is Spinal Tap in 1984. He then did Stand By Me in 86. His biggest box office hit, When Harry Met Sally, was in 89. Misery, 1990. A Few Good Men, 1992. That one got him an Academy Award nomination, although I don't know why he didn't get nominations for the others because they're all brilliant. He also did The American President in 95, The Bucket List in 2007. Rob Reiner's also appeared in a number of films. He was in Throw Mama from the Train in 87, Sleepless in Seattle in 93, Bullets Over Broadway in 84. He had a bit part in The First Wives Club in 96. He was in Primary Colors in 98, Ed TV in 99, The Wolf of Wall Street in 2013. But The Princess Bride was, I think, one of his most critical successes. Although everything else was a big success, like When Harry Met Sally, huge, people aren't talking about When Harry Met Sally like they do still about The Princess Bride. But what's funny about The Princess Bride is that it was not a huge hit out of the gate. The film premiered at the Ryerson Theatre in Toronto as part of the 1987 Toronto International Film Festival. I live in Toronto, grew up in Toronto. I've been to the Ryerson Theatre for a number of things. So that just makes me proud that it was first seen there. It went into wide release in September 25th, 1987. And after having, just as I say, that modest box office success, it actually became a cult film because of VHS. Now taking a flatter packing brush from the Trixie collection. This is her pink handle line. Her first brushes. These are great. You can buy these individually on our website or as a set. And I'm going into raw sienna. I'm just doing underneath this just to kind of start to build up this crease. So the plot of The Princess Bride, it's about a grandfather who shows up to his grandson's house. The grandson's sick, so he's come to read him a tale of swashbuckling. The story basically is about a princess named Buttercup and a farmhand named Wesley. And whenever she tells him to do something, he always complies by saying, "As you wish." And of course, the two fall in love, and so he leaves to make his fortune. And she gets word back that his ship that he left on is attacked by the dread pirate Roberts. 5 years later, Buttercup is betrothed to Florence Prince Humperdinck. Before the wedding, she's kidnapped by outlaws. A small man named Vizzini, a giant named Fezzik, and a Spanish sword master named Inigo Montoya. And his whole raison d'etre is to seek revenge against a six-fingered man who murdered his father. A masked man dressed in black shows up to pursue them. But also, so does Prince Humperdinck and his soldiers. The man in black confronts the outlaws atop the cliffs of insanity, and he defeats the swashbuckler Inigo in a fencing duel and knocks him out. He chokes the giant unconscious at another battle and then tricks Vizzini into drinking a deadly poison. He forcibly flees with Buttercup. She's still denying his assistance and saying that her boyfriend Wesley will come and free her. Also, Buttercup assumes that the man in black is the dread pirate Roberts and berates him for killing her Wesley and shoves him into a gorge. And while he's tumbling down, he shouts, "As you wish." And of course, she realizes that it is Wesley, and she throws herself after him, and they're reunited in the fire swamps. Humperdinck captures the pair after they emerge from the fire swamp, and Buttercup agrees to return with Humperdinck after he promises to release Wesley. Humperdinck secretly orders his sadistic vizier, Count Rugen, to take Wesley to his torture chamber, the Pit of Despair. Before being knocked out, Wesley notices that Rugen has 6 fingers on his right hand. Ooh, ooh, ooh. When Buttercup threatens suicide if the wedding happens, Humperdinck falsely promises to find Wesley for her. His real plan is to start a war with the neighboring country of Gilder by killing Buttercup and framing Gilder for the murder. That's what he secretly hired Vizzini to do before Wesley got in the way. Meanwhile, Fezzik becomes part of the Brute Squad, which is ordered to clear the thieves' forest before the wedding. This is when he finds Inigo drunk. He sobers him up and tells him about Rugen and his 6 fingers. 6 fingers! You killed my father! Prepare to die! Inigo realizes that he needs Fezzik and Wesley to help him storm the castle. Meanwhile, there's always a meanwhile, Buttercup finds out that Humperdinck never intended to search for Wesley and calls him a coward. Enraged, Humperdinck imprisons Buttercup and tortures Wesley seemingly to death. That's when Inigo and Fezzik find him in the pit of despair. So they take Wesley to Miracle Max, a healer, and he's able to revive the mostly dead Wesley, but not to full strength right away. So Fezzik carries Wesley and they follow Inigo to storm the castle. As they try to storm the castle, Humperdinck is in the process of marrying Buttercup and forces the priest to quicken the ceremony and then drags Buttercup off to her doom. While in the castle, Inigo finds Rugen and avenges his father. Wesley, on the other hand, locates Buttercup. Humperdinck finds them and challenges Wesley to a duel, but Wesley wills himself to stand and intimidates the priest into surrendering just before Inigo finds them. They escape the castle with Fezzik on 4 white horses and more or less live happily ever after. We then cut back to the bedroom and the grandson who is eagerly asking his grandfather to read the story again the next day, to which the grandfather replies, "As you wish." Cut, print, a classic is conceived. Because I'm building colors, I'm going to use the same brush and I'm going to go into a deeper color. The one I am going to go into is Toast next. I'm going to grab this bigger blending brush from Trixie's Sweet Treats collection just to help blend this all out. So the way that this movie got made is it started out that Rob Reiner was given the book as a gift from his father, Carl Reiner, and realized right away that he wanted to make a film out of it, especially after he had such success with This Is Spinal Tap. During the production of Stand By Me, Reiner had spoken to an executive at Paramount Pictures about making The Princess Bride his next picture, but they turned him down because apparently several studios had tried to do this before, but without any success. And those studios included 20th Century Fox, which had paid William Goldman $500,000 for the film rights and to write its screenplay in 73. So you can imagine how much $500,000 was in 1973. At the time, Richard Lester was signed to direct the film, and Richard Lester was famous for doing the Beatles films Help and A Hard Day's Night. He also directed the first Superman film with Christopher Reeves and its sequel. But what happens, which has happened a lot in the history of film, is the head of production at Fox was fired, and most of the projects that he had greenlighted were put on hold because the new person coming in didn't want to pick up somebody's old workload. So Goldman subsequently bought back the film rights to his novel with his own money, and it bounced around. Other directors attempted to adapt the book, including Francois Truffaut, Robert Redford, and Canadian director Norman Jewison. All failed for one reason or another. Norman Lear, who was the creator of All in the Family, which Rob Reiner starred in, had helped him with his film This Is Spinal Tap, and they worked closely to adapt Goldman's book to the screen. Now, the cast of the movie, it's such a great cast because a lot of these people, this was their first film, or in some cases, first film in a while. For instance, Fred Savage, who plays the grandson, he had been working in TV. He was a child, clearly. Like, I don't think he was 10 when he did this movie. But he had had a few guest appearances on TV shows. But his role in The Princess Bride actually gained him enough attention that he was cast in The Wonder Years the very next year after this film's release. The grandfather was played by Peter Falk, who had already had quite a good career on TV as Columbo from 71 to 78. The first episode was directed by a 24-year-old Steven Spielberg. But before he did Columbo, he had done movies. One of them was one of my favorite films, which I'll do a makeup and movies on soon, was Frank Capra's last film, Pocketful of Miracles. And although it wasn't a huge success, Peter Falk got a lot of attention for it. He was so funny in it. In fact, Peter Falk was nominated for an Oscar for the role. That's how good he was in it. He then went on to do supporting roles in TV and movies. He was in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, The Great Race, The Great Muppet Caper, Murder by Death, which is another great movie, The Cheap Detective, and another one of my favorite movies, although it's not a good movie, but it's one of my favorite, Vibes, starring Cyndi Lauper and Jeff Goldblum. The star of the movie, Cary Elwes, who I always think is an American actor who does a great British accent. No, he's a British actor who does a good American accent. But he plays Wesley slash the Man in Black slash the Dread Pirate Roberts. And before this, he had done some work in TV and films in Britain, enough so that Rob Reiner knew who he was and wanted him actually for the part of Wesley. But when it came time to casting, Cary Elwes was in Germany on the set of another movie. So Reiner actually flew out to Berlin to meet with him. While that was going on, the casting director, Jane Jenkins, was looking at other actors, including Christopher Reeves. Robin Wright, who plays Princess Buttercup, this was her first film role. She had been in a soap opera and, in fact, was one of the last people they saw for the part. Reiner and Jenkins had auditioned English actresses and found none of them to be appropriate. They even went to American actors, Uma Thurman, Meg Ryan, Sean Young. Can you imagine Sean Young? Courtney Cox, and Whoopi Goldberg even auditioned for the role of Buttercup. Wright's agent had heard of the casting and encouraged Wright to audition. And although shy, Wright impressed Jenkins and Reiner. They invited her to come to Goldman's home. And at his home, the doorbell rang and Rob went to the door and opened it. And as he opened it, the sun was shining behind Robin Wright. So it literally was this halo of light around this California blonde girl standing there in a white summer dress. And, well, she was backlit by God, is what Bill Goldman said. And that was it. That's all they needed. She was Princess Buttercup. She couldn't have had a more perfect audition without saying a word. The only problem was that Robin Wright was working on a soap opera at the time, Santa Barbara, and they wouldn't let her out of her contract. So they got the production to give her the time off from the soap that they needed for her to play Buttercup, as long as she extended her contract for the soap for another year. Now, this actually worked out to Robin Wright's benefit because the soap opera was running and on TV, so she was being seen by an at-home audience. And in that time of an extended year of working on the soap, the movie was being cut and edited. So by the time she was done the soap, the movie came out, and she was already famous enough to build on that stardom. So, you know, all's well that ends well, more or less, I guess is the end of that story. I'm going to take another flat brush of Trixie Mattel's, and I'm going to go into my PLouise Beauty and the Breakup palette, and I'm going to start down here in these pinky tones down here. I'm going to feature this one a lot. What's this one called? Never Settle. That's what that one is. But I'm going to start with a bit of Relief. Relief, Always Me, and Your Loss. I don't know if this is the right palette with the right names of shades for The Princess Bride, but this is what I'm using. One of the most popular characters in this movie has to be Inigo Montoya, played by Mandy Patinkin. Now, Mandy Patinkin was always considered the front runner for this role, but he hadn't done a lot of film work up till this point. He had had success in musical theater. He was actually the original Shay in Andrew Lloyd Webber's Evita with Patti LuPone on Broadway, which he won a Tony for. He then went on to start in some films. He was in Yentl with Barbra Streisand, and then returned to Broadway in '84 for Stephen Sondheim's Sunday in the Park with George, which is a fantastic, fantastic musical. Another actor in this movie is Chris Sarandon as Prince Humperdinck. Now, he was a theater actor, and one of the things that I was shocked to find out about Chris Sarandon is that he was Susan Sarandon's first husband. I didn't know that. I thought that they just happened to have the same last names. If you're not sure who Chris Sarandon is, he was the vampire in the original Fright Night. He was also the voice of Jack Skellington, the speaking voice in Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. Another character actor in this film who I just love, and you don't see him enough in films, is Christopher Guest as Count Tyrone Rugen. Now, clearly Christopher Guest got cast in this role because he was in This Is Spinal Tap, which Rob Reiner directed. But Christopher Guest was also a cast member of Saturday Night Live from '84 to '85. He also had a cameo in the film Little Shop of Horrors. He was the first customer that comes in to buy the plant in 1986. I remember when I saw that, I was like, is that Christopher Guest? What's happening? Why is he just there? And then, of course, he went on to garner his own fame with his own kind of company of actors doing Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, For Your Consideration. They're all mockumentaries. I think one of the definite cult favorites of this film is Wallace Shawn, who plays Vizzini, whose big line is, "Inconceivable!" The worst lisp ever. I actually feel like I don't have a lisp whenever I hear him do this role. He made his film debut in 1979 playing Diane Keaton's ex-husband in Woody Allen's Manhattan. He was also in All That Jazz as Bob Fosse's insurance agent. He was Earl in Strange Invaders in '83 and Mr. Hall in Clueless in '85. They cast Wallace as Vizzini because he was so short. They wanted that contrast next to Fezzik the giant, but Danny DeVito was also considered for the role, and Wallace Shawn was so afraid of not doing a good job because he kept thinking that if he did a bad job, they would fire him and hire Danny DeVito. So there you go. Speaking of Fezzik the giant, he was played by Andre the Giant, who was a wrestler, and he was actually the model for the character when William Goldman was writing the book. But when it came time to filming, he was unavailable. He was just very busy wrestling, and so they couldn't get him away from that. But at that time, Arnold Schwarzenegger was around, but not known. And he was eager to play the character. And Goldman considered casting him. But by the time the film actually went into production with Rob Reiner, Schwarzenegger had become one of the biggest movie stars in the world, and they couldn't afford him. So they contacted the World Wrestling Federation to ask about Andre the Giant again. He unfortunately was scheduled to do a match in Tokyo that would pay him $5 million. And so they considered some other tall actors for the role, specifically Lou Ferrigno and Carl Stryken, who played Lurch in the Addams Family films. They even approached Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the role. He had previously been in the film Airplanes, so they thought he was a good choice. And he was interested in playing the part, but had to turn it down because the shooting schedule conflicted with his NBA schedule. Liam Neeson also auditioned for the role, but apparently he wasn't tall enough. Oh. So near the end of casting, the World Wrestling Federation told the production that Andre's match in Tokyo had been canceled, which cleared him to play the role of Fezzik. So they got him after all. Another cameo in this film is done by Peter Cook, who is a popular satirist and comedian in Britain in the 60s. He actually ended up teaming up with Dudley Moore, and they were a very successful comedy team. Some of their albums are still hugely successful and listened to globally. A huge name, like a legend in the industry. Another legend, British comedian Mel Smith, plays the albino, and Mel Smith was a very popular comedian and actor, and even director on sketch comedy shows in the 90s. So he's another name that a lot of the British audience was very familiar with. Two of the people that were in this movie who you can't forget, just because they were so brilliant, was Carol Kane and Billy Crystal. Now, Carol Kane is just a fantastic character actress, and quite frankly, if you don't know who she is, I can't help you. Her breakout role was in television as Simca Dablitz Gravis, wife of Latka Gravis, on Taxi from 1981 to 1983. She received 2 Emmy Awards for that role. She's also appeared in TV shows like Cheers, Seinfeld, Two and a Half Men, Ugly Betty. She was also the Penguin's mother on Gotham, and Lillian Klaschstuper, Kimmy's landlord on the Netflix series Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. But one of her most popular and funniest roles has to be as the ghost of Christmas Present in the 1988 film Scrooge, starring Bill Murray. She's just so funny. She's just beats the living tar out of him. In the movie The Princess Bride, she plays Valerie, Miracle Max's wife, and Billy Crystal, who is Miracle Max. These two steal the show. They actually spent a lot of time together developing a backstory for these two characters. It's the most impressive performance because they're in it for a fraction of the film. Like they don't even make up the biggest part of the film, and yet they were both so funny. But because of all the backstory they created, their performance is so layered and flawless. And they ran away with the movie, literally. Now, if you don't know who Billy Crystal is, you're very young, and I forgive you. Billy Crystal's claim to fame was playing Jodie Dallas on the TV series Soap. And Jodie Dallas was one of the first unambiguously gay characters on an American TV series. He played the role to critical acclaim from 1977 to 1981. He was so popular in the role that he actually ended up with his own TV show, the Billy Crystal Comedy Hour, in 1982. He then went on to host Saturday Night Live twice, March 17th in 84, and then later that year on the finale of that season on May 5th. But then he was cast as a season regular. He created a lot of classic characters. He started hosting things like the Grammy Awards. He hosted 3 times, and then he hosted the Oscars 9 times. He's the second person to host the Oscars the most. The first person is Bob Hope. Billy Crystal hosted them 9 times. Bob Hope hosted them 19 times. That's just what Billy Crystal did on TV. For film, his first acting role was in Joan Rivers' financial flop but critical success, Rabbit Test. He had a bit part in Spinal Tap. He was in Running Scared. He was the lead role in When Harry Met Sally that Rob Reiner directed. He was in City Slickers. I think all of the City Slickers. There may have been 3. I know there were 2. He was in Analyze This. And if that weren't enough, he was the voice of Mike Wazowski in Pixar's Monsters, Inc. Just a legend, and in my opinion, fit really well into this cast of legends. I mean, literally, if you weren't already a legend and known in your industry, then this was your first movie, The Princess Bride. So it was a star maker and a star getter all at the same time. Rob Reiner, thank you very much. All right, I'm wondering if this isn't going a little too pinky winky. I'm just going to take You never know how often you say until you edit yourself saying 400 times. I am going to take a fluffy brush and just this, what is this called? By Felicia. Is this a nice neutrally taupey color? I'm just going to try and just wash out a little bit of this pink, just a little. Ooh, this did a great job. Yeah. That's better, because this is starting to look like I have a black eye. I just want it to be nice tones. Okay, I think I am going to cut my crease with my PLouise. Might as well keep it PLouise for as long as we can. My Rumors in shade 0. This is just one of my favorite for cutting a crease, just because it's white. It allows for full pigmentation of whatever shadow you put on top of it. When they were filming Princess Bride, it was shot in England and Ireland in 1986. and Rob Reiner rented a house during production that was kind of in between all the locations, so it was accessible always, and often had the cast over for like cast and crew meals and get-togethers, weekend stuff. And because of this, a lot of the crew felt that this was one of the reasons why there was such great chemistry with everyone. They were really able to kind of connect socially. Carrie Elways and Robin Wright were single at the time and did develop a bit of a mutual crush on each other, but they never did anything about it. Uh, at least that's what they say, and that's what everyone else connected to this movie says, that it never happened. But God, they were so beautiful. How do you not at least flirt? Do you know what I mean? One of the big points in the film is the sword fighting that Carrie Elways and Mandy Patinkin had to do. In fact, I think it's some of the best sword choreography on film ever. They had to learn to do their choreography both left and right-handed, and their choreographer demanded that they both know each other's choreography as well, so that they were aware of what each was doing and minimizing potential for any kind of injury. There was only one stunt double for any of the sword fighting, and he wasn't even there for the sword fighting. There's just this one scene where both characters swing on this bar, and he played both characters, so that kept things cheap and cheerful. The fencing instructor was Bob Anderson, and the stunt coordinator was Peter Diamond. And they both had worked on training actors for Star Wars, so they knew what they were doing for sure. Something that happened in the first month of filming was Andre the Giant used an ATV to get to and from set. All the other actors got in a van, but he didn't fit in the van, so he would use this ATV, all-terrain vehicle, to drive himself to and from set. And one day he convinced Carrie Elways to go on a spin with him, and they had a bit of a spill, and Carrie Elways broke his toe. Uh, so after the first month, like, he spent the rest of the film with a broken toe. So a lot of the scenes where he's sword fighting and stuff like that, he's got a broken toe. And he kept the injury from Rob Reiner, but he found out quick enough. And, well, it was too late to find a new Wesley anyway. And I think Wesley would have I think that Carrie Elways would have killed himself if he hadn't been allowed. But if you watch some of the scenes, you can see him limping just for short periods. Speaking of Andre the Giant, he had undergone major back surgery at the time. He had a lot of back problems, due to his height and everything. And because of that, he could not carry Carrie Elways during their fight scene, or Robin Wright for that matter. So they had to use ramps where Carrie Elways would actually be standing, but look like he was on his back. There were stunt doubles used, and in some cases where Robin Wright was concerned, like, they had her on cables just to take the weight off of him. Other injuries that happened on set, when the Miracle Max scene, Mandy Patinkin bruised his ribs. The whole cast laughed so hard during that scene. They filmed it for 2 days. There was so much that they filmed that they couldn't use because a lot of what Billy Crystal was saying was a little too blue for a family film. But Rob Reiner had to move his directing chair out somewhere else because he was laughing too hard. And Mandy Patinkin bruised his ribs holding in his laughter. This is a Lois Cosmetics brush. Lois Cosmetics is a great British indie brand. And this is just a great little brush for putting on like anything shimmery or glittery. I'm taking Throw It Away, which is this gold shimmer. I'm just going to do my lid with this. Another accident that happened on set was between Carrie Elways and Christopher Guest. There's a scene in it when Christopher Guest bops Wesley on the head with his sword, knocks him unconscious. And they weren't getting it right. And so Carrie Elways had said to Christopher Guest, just go ahead and hit me. Like, I don't think he meant to really, like, go ahead, but Christopher Guest kind of, I guess, didn't pull his punch fast enough. But he hit him on the top of the head with the sword, knocked him completely out. He had to go to the hospital. I'm just going to go back into the Beauty Bay Nude palette, and I'm taking a couple of darker shimmers. Icon and Lucky Penny. These are both just coppery tones. I'm going to start with Icon just out here on the just out here just to give this some depth. There was an alternative ending to this movie, and I'm kind of glad that they didn't do it this way, but it is a charming option. At the end of the movie, when the grandson asks his grandfather to come back and read him the story the next day, and the grandfather says, "As you wish," that's where the film ends. But they had actually filmed Fred Savage's character getting up from the bed and going to the window, I guess presumably to wave goodbye to his grandfather, and he sees outside his house Wesley, Buttercup, Fezzik, and Inigo all on their white horses before they all ride away. Even the soundtrack for Princess Bride was a huge success, or at least has become one. Rob Reiner was a huge fan of Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits, and so he approached him to do it. And that whole he sings the fairy book. I'm gonna read you a fairy book story. It's become iconic as well. On the audio track on one of the DVDs, Rob Reiner tells the story of how Mark Knopfler wouldn't do the movie, score the movie, unless he would do one thing. He was actually an admirer of Rob Reiner's work as well, and he said that he would only do it on one condition, that somewhere in the film, Rob Reiner would include the USS Coral Sea baseball cap from This is Spinal Tap, and there was no way to put it into the film because it's a period piece. Also, he didn't have the original cap, but he had one made and had it hanging in the grandson's room. And then later, after the fact, I guess after Rob showed him the hat, he told Rob Reiner that he had been joking the whole time. For a bit of color, I'm actually going to dip into Be Perfect's Pastels palette. And I think I'm just going to take this blue, a nice princess blue, and I'm just going to wash it on the upper eyelid just to create some color. And there's been some adaptations, or at least there's been some attempts at things. Composer Adam Gutel was working with William Goldman on the musical adaptation of The Princess Bride in 2006. The project was abandoned in February of 2007 after Goldman reportedly demanded 75% of the author's share. Gutel, of course, did the music and the lyrics, and I guess felt that that was worth more than 25%. In 2013, Disney announced that they would adapt a stage musical of Princess Bride, and they had a website which launched a couple of months later. In 2016, Rob Reiner said the project was still in development despite roadblocks, and that Mark Shaman, Randy Newman, and John Mayer had all been approached to write songs, but they had all turned him down. Maybe they heard what Goldman wanted as far as his due. I don't know. I've not been able to find anything more on that. Oddly enough, there have been some board games created based on the movie. One of them was a dice game, but it also came with a VHS video. That happened in '88. In 2008, Playroom Entertainment released The Princess Bride Storming the Castle. In 2013, Games Salou, which is now Tabletop Tycoon, published multiple games based on specific scenes from the film, including The Princess Bride Prepare to Die, a card game, The Princess Bride, A Battle of Wits, and a dice game, The Princess Bride, I Hate to Kill You. In 2020, Ravensburger published the Princess Bride Adventure Book game, which was a collaborative card and miniatures game with several boards presented as chapters. In June of 2020, there was a fan-made recreation of The Princess Bride, which was released on Quibi, called Home Movie The Princess Bride, which was produced by Jason Reitman during the COVID-19 quarantine, and the ensemble cast filmed themselves recreating the various scenes at their homes, and this raised money for the World Central Kitchen charity. Mark Knopfler permitted the use of his music. Rob Reiner even approved of the project, briefly stepping in to play the grandfather. It also features the final performance of Carl Reiner playing the grandfather in the last scene to his own son, Rob Reiner. The film was dedicated to his memory as he had died days after the filming was done. In September of 2020, the original cast members took part in a virtual table read of the script called The Princess Bride Reunion, and it was to help raise money for the Democratic Party in Wisconsin. Now, the reason that this is funny is that Cary Elwes is known for his feud with Republican Texas Senator and Princess Bride fan Ted Cruz, barf. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Elwes initiated the 2020 fundraiser to support Joe Biden in the battleground state of Wisconsin. This reunion raised more than $4 million for the Democrats. The cast members promoted the event beforehand using the hashtag Princess Bride Reunion and hashtag Dump Trumperdink. More than 110,000 viewers donated $1 or more to the Wisconsin Democrats to view the live stream event. So there you go. There's power in numbers, people. There's been a lot of talk about, over the years, different people wanting to remake The Princess Bride. And something that's really touching is that the fan base has spoken out about this. Whenever there's been grumblings of somebody taking on the project, they have unanimously risen and said, over our dead bodies, and just saying that a remake of it would be a bad idea. Elwes has said that there's a shortage of perfect movies in the world. It would be a pity to damage this one. Jamie Lee Curtis, who's Christopher Guest's wife, stated, there is only one Princess Bride, and it's William Goldman's and Rob Reiner's. Because of this, the film has been deemed untouchable by the cinematic community, meaning that you just can't remake it. Casablanca is one of these films. There are a lot of classics you just can't remake. But I think that a better project would be something involving Miracle Max and his wife Valerie. There have been rumblings of a prequel to Princess Bride revolving around the two. Or even possibly something after that point in the movie following the two. I have to say, I think that that's an excellent idea. It's Princess Bride adjacent. It gives us more of what we wanted to see in the original movie anyway. And two classic comedic talents working together in a film. I mean, what's not to want to see? I'm just saying. I'm going to use a Milani lip liner in fuchsia for my lip line, which I suck at doing, so bear with. I'm going to use two lipstick colors from C Color Cosmetics, a very pinky nude and then a light pink one. We'll start with the pink one. Just like these to look as dewy, virginal, fresh, yet kissable as possible. And I'm just taking the lighter pink one and putting it on as a highlight. I'm just going to take a splash of the Be Perfect white lipstick. This is excellent. I hope I don't need to buy more soon. Just for the center of the lip. Just to give it that pouty goodness. And now I'm going to use some of these darker tones just for some contour. For blush, I'm using the Trixie palette, the Summer of Blush palette. As you can see, this is well loved. I'm almost out of the highlighter. God bless. This is the best highlighter because it's kind of like a pinky pearly highlighter, so it gives that glow. And I don't want to have a lot of necessarily visible makeup on as far as like blush and that, but I do want it to show up. So I like to spray my face just a little bit before I put the highlighter on. I feel like this helps kind of give it some real shine. And make sure that's on the apples of the cheek and up into here. Just has an ever so subtle pink tone to it, which I just love on the cheeks. I also like to put my highlighter down first because it feels more to me like it's coming through the blush, so it's more of an inner glow than, and then Just right there. Just a little right there. Maybe just a little right there. Ooh. And then, with my favorite blush brush, this pink is lovely. This is just such a nice, soft pink. It's called Girl on Girl. I don't know why it has to be, well, I gotta be girl on girl. But it's just such a soft pink. On its own, this is a gorgeous blush, just on its own. I also find if you do like a bit of a smile, you only get the blush on the apple of your cheek. It doesn't tend to go too much further because that's all the brush is able to hit. I like to bring my blush up high too. Just get it right all in there. I like to break down a lot of this white under the eye with the pink. But I feel like all that white that's there helps the pink really show up. See the difference? This is without. It's that little titchy touch extra pink. I have other pink. I love a pink blush, so I have other pinks, but I felt that this was the best pink for this look, just because it's so soft and it builds nicely, but it really never gets too harsh. See what I mean? It's just very soft. Princess Cheeks, which was my drag queen name in high school. All right. That's about as Princess Bridey as it's going to get, I'm telling you what. I'm going to throw on some lashes, my hair, my crown, and my top, and I'll be right back. And here's the look. Complete with Fat Madonna wig, my House of Milani nails. These are my favorite, the pink ones. They just look like candy. I will put a link to them down below in the description box. I created this little crown for this look. I also, well, this is my Summer of Love sundress. I thought Buttercup would wear something like this off the shoulders. Fabulosity. As I said off the top, the main makeups for this movie review were The Beauty and the Breakup by PLouise and Beauty Bay's Nudes, Nudes, Nudes. Or Nude, Nude, Nude. I don't know. It still sounds dirty. I got a little help from Beauty Bay's Pastels. And I enjoyed, as always, my Trixie Mattel Summer of Blush palette. This is my favorite blush palette of all time. I have others that I like. This is the one I love the most. The movie, The Princess Bride, if you haven't seen it, I hope that I've enticed you to give it a go, give it a look. It is a fantastic film. It inspired a lot of other styles of films. If you've never seen it, when you watch it, you will recognize other films in this because they were all inspired by this one. There you go. That is my movies and makeup for this month. If you would like to support this channel, I have links down below to my Patreon page, my Redbubble merch store, and if you'd like to leave a tip or do, also give this video a thumbs up if you haven't, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't as well, because these are the best ways to support my channel. Also leave a comment down below. I love hearing from you, what you think. Let me know if you've seen this movie, what you think. Maybe you have a suggestion for a future movie. I have a list. I have a big list. Maybe your suggestion's on it. Maybe it's not, and I need a kick in the rubber parts to get on it. Either way, thank you so much for visiting, spending some time with me, watching me throw some makeup on my face. I mean, I think this is the most makeup I've ever had on my face without actually looking like I'm wearing a lot of makeup. So I tell you, this was fun to do for sure. Either way, I hope that you have a fantastic week. I hope that you are enjoying all sorts of movies because there's so many out there. It's ridiculous. There's movies upon movies. You shouldn't ever be bored ever in your life in this day and age. And until next time, miss me. Mwah, seriously. Ooh, look at these nails. My princess. Oh, I can't touch it.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.